The mockery begins. The Galactic Empire was old and proud. It ruled across thousands of star systems and carried the weight of centuries of victories. When the Empire first learned that Earth, a small and unimportant planet on the edge of the galaxy, was building prototype warships, they did not feel threatened. Instead, they laughed. To them, Earth was young, untested, and weak. Its people had barely begun to travel beyond their own star system. The great admirals and counselors of the Empire gathered in their halls and spoke of humans as if they were children, playing with wooden toys. The news of Earth's prototypes spread quickly across the Empire. Some alien leaders mocked the design, saying the ships looked clumsy and heavy. Others declared that humans were wasting their time and resources, building machines that would never survive even a single battle. They pointed at Earth's history of small wars and weak defenses and told their citizens there was nothing to fear. The Empire had fleets so large they could blot out suns, fleets that had crushed countless rebellions and rivals. Against such power, how could Earth stand? But on Earth, things were different. The people did not laugh. They worked in silence, hidden from the eyes of their enemies. Scientists, engineers, and soldiers gathered in secret bases. They tested engines that burned too hot, weapons that shook apart, and shields that failed under the smallest strain. Many prototypes exploded on their launch pads, leaving behind fire and smoke. Others collapsed in the void of space before they could even leave Earth's orbit. Each failure was painful, but humanity pressed on. They knew the Empire was watching. They knew the day would come when the Empire would test them, and they could not afford to be weak. Among the many prototypes, one ship was different. It was hidden from reports and kept far from the eyes of spies. The humans called it Project Aegis. Unlike the other ships, Aegis was built with something new, something dangerous. It carried technology born not only from human creativity but also from stolen alien research, fragments taken from wrecked ships and forgotten battlefields. The engineers whispered that this ship could change everything. While the world above went on with its routine, deep underground the work continued, and the sound of machines echoed through steel halls. The Galactic Empire sent their scouts to observe Earth's progress. Those scouts reported back that the humans were still far from dangerous. They sent images of broken ships, half-formed hulls, and weapons that did not work. The Empire laughed harder than before. "Look at them," one admiral said. "They build like children stacking stones, and they expect us to fear them?" The council agreed, dismissing Earth's efforts as foolish dreams. For them, the humans were not rivals. They were entertainment. But not all aliens were so sure. Some smaller species, long crushed under the Empire's rule, began to wonder. They saw the humans working without rest, failing and rebuilding, never stopping. They whispered to one another, maybe these humans were not so weak after all. Maybe their stubbornness meant something. Still, their voices were drowned out by the thunder of the Empire's laughter. The ruling council declared that humanity would never rise high enough to be a threat. Back on Earth, the narrator could almost feel the pressure building. The people carried on as if nothing had changed, but everyone knew the truth. The Empire's eyes were on them, and every mistake they made was being watched. Failure meant humiliation, and humiliation could lead to invasion. Yet still they worked. In hidden bases, engineers fine-tuned weapons that could pierce through the hardest armor. Pilots trained in simulators where entire fleets fought and burned. Soldiers whispered stories about the day their ship would stand against the Empire and show the galaxy what humanity was made of. Project Aegis grew slowly. Its hull was forged in silence, each plate of metal shaped by hands that shook with both fear and hope. The engines were tested again and again until they roared like storms. The weapons were mounted, strange and powerful, humming with energy no alien eye had ever seen, and deep inside, the heart of the ship beat with a rhythm that was not fully understood even by its creators. It was as if the ship itself was alive, waiting for the day it would be unleashed. The Empire ignored the warnings of their few cautious scouts. They told themselves humans would never succeed. But across the galaxy, rumors began to spread. Smugglers and traders whispered in dark ports. They spoke of a hidden warship on Earth, a ship unlike any other. They said it was being prepared for something greater, that it would not only defend humanity but also challenge the Empire itself. Most who heard these stories dismissed them as lies, nothing more than human pride. But some listened carefully, their eyes narrowing in thought. And so the galaxy turned day by day, unaware of how close it stood to change. The Galactic Empire laughed in their grand halls, certain of their eternal power. Humanity toiled in silence, each failure shaping their strength. and in the hidden depths of Earth's shipyards, Project Aegis waited. The narrator leaves the moment hanging. No one in the Empire yet understood the danger. They did not know that a single human prototype would one day stand before their fleet and turn their laughter into silence. For now, the mocking voices of the Empire filled the stars. But soon those voices would tremble. The hidden ship beneath the oceans of Earth, in a secret chamber carved deep into rock and steel, the hidden ship slept. The world above went on with its ordinary rhythm, but below the surface, men and women worked as if every breath depended on what they built. Project Aegis was not spoken about outside those walls. The engineers who shaped its frame lived like ghosts, never seeing the sunlight. The soldiers who trained to fly it vanished from records, their names erased as if they had never lived. To the rest of the galaxy, Aegis did not exist. The shipyards were unlike anything humans had built before. Massive cranes lifted black slabs of alloy that shimmered with strange light. These were not ordinary metals. They came from wreckage pulled from forgotten alien battlefields. The Empire never cared to notice when scraps vanished, but Earth noticed. Every piece of alien metal, every fragment of lost technology was studied and absorbed. Humans were quick to learn and faster still to adapt. The heart of Aegis was its engine. It was unlike any other. Human scientists had studied faster than light drives for decades, but never managed to perfect them. With alien fragments, they created something new. It did not hum like normal drives. It pulsed, steady and powerful, as if it carried its own heartbeat. When it roared for the first time, the ground above trembled and the oceans shifted. The engineers looked at each other in silence, knowing they had made something that no empire had ever dared to imagine. The Galactic Empire still laughed. Scouts sent back reports of failed prototypes, broken ships drifting in orbit, engines that failed before they could even ignite. The counselors mocked Earth in their courts. They build toys, one alien general said, and toys break. The galaxy laughed with them. No one believed Earth could ever rise, but none of those reports spoke of Aegis. None of those images showed the black hull hidden in the ocean. The captain chosen for Aegis was not a famous name. He was not a celebrated commander. He was a quiet man, hardened by battles fought on Earth itself. His name was Elias Ward, and he carried no illusions. He knew the power of the Empire. He had seen the arrogance of their fleets. But he also knew the heart of his people. He trained with patience, learning every corner of the ship, every system, every sound it made. He spoke to the crew not as soldiers under his command, but as partners bound by survival. Inside Aegis, the crew trained endlessly. They learned to move in silence, to fire with precision, to fight as if their single ship were an entire fleet. Every system was tested, pushed, and repaired. They ate together in narrow halls, their laughter thin but real, the only comfort in the shadow of what they faced. Some of them feared they would never return once the ship launched. Others carried a strange excitement, the thrill of facing the impossible. The narrator moved slowly through these halls, showing how humans worked without rest. Pilots strapped into simulators that filled their minds with images of battle. Engineers bent over consoles, watching streams of data flow like rivers. The ship itself seemed to watch them, its dark hull reflecting the light of their torches. It was more than a machine. It was a promise. Outside Earth, the stars stretched wide. The Empire's ships patrolled with confidence, certain that no human weapon could challenge them. Their arrogance blinded them. They did not see the signals hidden in the dark, the transmissions carried in silence, the preparations that humans made. Aegis was not meant to defend Earth alone. It was meant to strike where no one expected. Whispers began to spread in distant ports. Traders spoke of a ship hidden beneath Earth's seas, a ship with weapons that burned brighter than suns. Pirates laughed at the rumors, yet some listened carefully. Smugglers swore they had seen strange lights in Earth's skies, and in the deepest corners of the galaxy where the Empire's shadow was feared, those whispers began to sound like hope. But on Earth there was no time for whispers. The final stages of Aegis were almost complete. Its weapons were mounted, vast cannons that glowed with strange energy. Its shields, tested against storms and impacts, stood firm. And its engines, when ignited, sang like thunder rolling across the stars. The crew stood before it silent, as if in the presence of something sacred. The first test came in secret. At midnight, the ship rose from the ocean, its massive frame cutting through the waves like a shadow of steel. The night sky above seemed to bend as its engines roared. Clouds lit with fire and the sea split open beneath it. For a moment, Earth itself seemed to tremble. Then with a burst of light, Aegis climbed into the stars. No scouts saw it. No spies reported it. The Empire remained blind, wrapped in its laughter. But for those on Earth, who stood watching from hidden stations, the sight was unforgettable. Aegis was no longer a dream. It was alive. Captain Elias Ward sat at the command chair, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. His crew looked to him, waiting for orders, their hearts heavy with both fear and hope. He spoke only once that night. His voice was steady, clear, and carried the weight of everything they had built. We do not fight for pride. We fight because we must. And when they laugh at us again, let them remember this ship. The engines roared once more, and Aegis vanished into the void. The narrator leaves the image hanging. One ship, hidden in silence, carrying the weight of a world. The Empire still laughed, but in the darkness between stars, their laughter had already begun to fade. The first encounter. The Galactic Empire did not send warnings. It never needed to. When it moved, the galaxy obeyed. That was how things had always been. So when whispers reached the Empire's admirals about Earth's hidden warship, they did not take them as threats. They took them as excuses. Excuses to show their strength once more. Excuses to remind the galaxy that no world could rise without their permission. From their grand halls, the order went out. A fleet of warships would gather at the edge of human space. Not a small patrol, not a token force, but a true fleet. Hundreds of cruisers and carriers, each bristling with weapons that had burned down empires before. They called it a lesson. Earth, they said, must be reminded of its place. The fleet moved like a storm. Across the stars, its engines glowed red and gold, stretching in a line so vast it seemed endless. Traders who crossed their path fled in silence, whispering what they had seen. Rumors spread like fire, an entire fleet sent to crush one small planet. And still the Empire laughed. On Earth, the news arrived quietly. The command centers lit with warnings. Satellites tracked the movement, and for the first time, fear filled every hidden chamber. The fleet was too large, too powerful. No world had ever stood against such strength and survived. Yet in the silence of Earth's oceans, Project Aegis prepared. The ship rose once more from the waters, its black hull glistening with starlight, its engines burning with steady fire. Captain Elias Ward stood on the bridge, watching the data scroll across the displays. His crew moved without panic. They had trained for this moment again and again, though none had truly believed it would come so soon. Every hand was steady, every voice calm. The air was heavy, but it was not with fear. It was with focus. The first sight of the enemy came as a ripple on the sensors. Small points of light appeared in the void, then grew into giants. The alien fleet stretched across the darkness, their weapons glowing, their shields alive with energy. It was a sight meant to crush hope, to remind humans of their weakness. For centuries, the Empire had won battles by fear alone. The aliens sent a message before the first shot. It was not a warning. It was laughter. Their voices filled the comms with mockery, calling Aegis a toy, calling humans fools for thinking one ship could face them. Some even suggested they capture the ship, tear it apart, and display its pieces as trophies. Their voices carried the arrogance of a power that had never known true defeat. Elias Ward did not answer. He let their words hang in the air, empty and cruel. Then he gave one order, simple and clear: fire. The silence shattered. Aegis roared to life, its cannons glowing with strange blue fire. The first blast cut through the void like lightning, striking a massive alien cruiser at the fleet's front. Shields flared, tried to hold, then collapsed in a burst of sparks. The cruiser's hull tore open, fire spilling into space. In seconds, a ship the size of a city was nothing but debris. The laughter on the comms died. The aliens screamed orders, their voices sharp with sudden fear. Dozens of ships turned their weapons on Aegis. Lasers, plasma, and missiles filled the void, a storm of light meant to swallow the lone ship. But Aegis moved like no other. Its engines twisted it through the barrage, sliding between streams of fire, diving through explosions. Where other ships would break, it danced. Another blast came from its cannons, then another. Each strike was precise, each strike fatal. A second cruiser split apart, then a carrier, the void filled with wreckage, glowing with flames that burned without air. The alien fleet, mighty and endless, now carried wounds it had never known before. On the bridge, the crew did not cheer. They only worked, hands moving across controls, eyes fixed on the battle. They knew what they faced. This was only the beginning. The Empire's admirals raged, demanding the fleet crush the human ship. More weapons lit the void, more fire poured across space. Aegis took hits, its shields flared, its hull groaned, but it endured. Each time it answered, an alien ship died. The balance began to shift. One ship standing alone had broken the silence of fear. In the darkness, alien commanders whispered the unthinkable. They spoke of retreat. They spoke of facing something they could not understand. For centuries, no enemy had forced such words into their mouths. Yet here it was, a human prototype, a single creation of a world they had mocked. The narrator lingers on the moment. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The mighty empire, the power that had ruled for ages, was being held back by one ship. The stars, cold and distant, bore witness as laughter turned into silence. And then as another alien ship exploded in fire, Captain Elias Ward spoke at last. His voice cut through the comms, steady and sharp. "You wanted to see our toy," he said. "Now watch what it can do." The fleet trembled. The battle was not over, but already the Empire understood what it had never believed possible. Humanity had struck, and the galaxy would never forget it. The trembling fleet, the void of space, was no longer filled with laughter. The echoes of arrogance had burned away in fire and wreckage. Where the Galactic Empire once believed it was untouchable, now it faced something it could not explain. One ship, one human prototype, moved through its fleet like a shadow of death. The alien commanders shouted orders, their voices breaking with panic. They had trained for countless battles, but none of their strategies prepared them for this. They launched wave after wave of attacks, missiles that could split moons, beams that could cut through steel worlds. Yet Aegis moved with strange grace, twisting between storms of fire, answering with weapons that struck with merciless precision. The crew aboard Aegis worked like a single mind. Every hand was steady, every order carried weight. The gunners fired in rhythm, their shots tearing apart ships that had once been symbols of Empire power. The engineers fought to hold the shields together, sparks leaping from panels as the ship absorbed punishment no other craft could endure. And at the center of it all sat Captain Elias Ward, silent, calm, his eyes fixed on the stars as if he had already seen the end. The Empire's fleet began to break. First it was whispers among the lower ranks, quiet voices asking if they should retreat. Then it was actions, ships pulling back, their captains choosing survival over pride. But retreat did not save them. Aegis hunted them with relentless fire, each blast cutting down those who turned their backs. The void was littered with burning wreckage, a graveyard of arrogance. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire trembled. Across their ranks, the fear spread like a plague. Soldiers who had believed the Empire's power eternal now stared at their collapsing fleet and felt the weight of doubt. Admirals who once spoke with certainty now screamed with disbelief. How could one ship, one human ship, undo them? The narrator moves closer, showing the faces of the alien commanders. Their eyes were wide, their jaws clenched with fear. They had expected an easy hunt. They had expected to drag Earth's prototype into the light and destroy it before all the galaxy. Instead, they were the ones exposed, their weakness laid bare for every whispering corner of the stars to see. And then, Aegis spoke. The comms lit up with a single transmission, carried across every channel. It was not a threat. It was not a boast. It was only 5 words, spoken in a voice steady and cold. This is only the beginning. The words spread through the fleet like fire. Every alien soldier heard them, every commander felt them. The meaning was clear. Humanity was not finished. Humanity was not afraid. And humanity would not stop here. The alien ships wavered, some breaking formation, others turning their guns not at Aegis but at each other in confusion. The chain of command fractured under the weight of fear. Where once there had been unity, now there was chaos. On Aegis, the crew did not cheer. They understood the truth. This battle was not victory. It was only the first strike. They could see the damage on their own ship. Scars cut deep into the hull, systems straining under the pressure of survival. They had endured, but they knew the Empire would not forget. The next wave would be greater. The next storm would be worse. Still, in that moment, something powerful filled the hearts of every human watching. For the first time, they had looked into the face of the Empire and seen fear staring back. That fear was worth every sacrifice, every failure. every hour spent in secret building the ship that now carved its name into history. Far away, across the galaxy, smaller nations and oppressed worlds listened to the reports. They had lived in silence under the Empire's shadow for generations. They had bent their heads, afraid to resist. Now they heard of one human ship standing against the fleet of fleets. Now they heard of laughter turned into silence. And in the dark, those nations whispered a new word: hope. The Empire tried to regain control. Their leaders sent messages of denial, claiming the losses were exaggerated, that the humans had only struck by chance. But the wreckage drifting in space told the truth. The images spread, carried by smugglers, traitors, spies. The galaxy had seen the fire, and the galaxy would remember. The narrator lingers on the silence that followed the battle. The stars glowed cold and distant, their light falling across fields of wreckage. Among the ruins, Aegis drifted, scarred but alive. Its engines burned with quiet fire, its cannons still glowing. It had survived, and that survival was louder than any words. On the bridge, Elias Ward looked at his crew. Their faces were pale, their eyes tired, but none turned away. They had stood against the storm, and they had not broken. He spoke softly, but his words carried through the halls. They will come again. They will come with more ships, more power, more fury. But today they learned something. They learned that humanity does not bow. The crew answered with silence, but their silence was stronger than any cheer. It was the silence of resolve, of men and women who knew they had stepped into legend. And so, as the wreckage of the Empire's fleet drifted into darkness, Aegis turned its engines once more. Its path was not back to Earth, not yet. It had a message to deliver, a message the galaxy would not ignore. The narrator leaves the image burning in the mind. One ship, scarred and defiant, carrying hope across the stars. Behind it, the greatest fleet in the galaxy lay shattered. Ahead of it, the future waited, trembling. The message to the galaxy, the wreckage of the battle, drifted in silence. Fragments of once mighty warships spun slowly in the void, glowing faintly with the last sparks of fire. For centuries, the fleets of the Galactic Empire had carried fear wherever they went. Now their remains floated like broken statues, proof that even the strongest could fall. And at the center of this graveyard moved one ship, black and scarred, its engines still burning. Project Aegis had survived. Across the galaxy, the story began to spread. Traders carried tales of the battle into hidden ports. Smugglers whispered of a single human ship that tore through an Empire's fleet. Captains who had fled in fear spoke of cannons that burned brighter than suns, of a vessel that moved like a phantom through storms of fire. Each retelling changed the details, but the heart of the story remained the same. Humanity had faced the Empire and lived. On worlds ruled by the Empire, whispers rose in the streets. The weak and the oppressed who had long bowed their heads began to lift their eyes. If one ship could do this, what more could humans build? What more could other worlds dare to dream? In dark corners and quiet halls, the laughter of the Empire was replaced by something far more dangerous: hope. But in the high towers of the Empire, the mood was different. The council met in rage. Their faces burned with humiliation. Their voices echoed with fury. They swore vengeance, swore that Earth would be crushed until nothing remained but dust. To them, the loss was not just ships or soldiers. It was pride, and pride wounded is more dangerous than pride intact. They began to plan a greater assault, one that would leave no room for resistance. Back aboard Aegis, the crew did not think of glory. They walked the scarred halls, patching wounds in the metal, repairing what they could with hands that trembled from exhaustion. The ship had survived, but it bore the marks of the battle. Burned panels, twisted steel, systems that groaned with every spark of energy. Yet as they worked, they knew they were no longer unknown. Their ship had become a symbol, and symbols were harder to kill than steel. Captain Elias Ward sat in the command chair, his eyes heavy but sharp. Around him, the crew moved in silence, waiting for his next words. He understood the weight of what had been done. They had not only fought a battle, they had carved a message into the stars. He activated the ship's transmitter, linked it to channels across the galaxy, and spoke. His voice was not loud, but it was clear. We are humanity. You thought us weak, you thought us fools, but you were wrong. You mocked our prototypes, you mocked our dreams, yet today one ship has stood against your empire. Remember this. The age of your laughter is over. The words carried far, farther than he could know. Across the galaxy, listeners paused. Some felt fear, others felt awe. But all understood the Empire was no longer eternal. A new force had spoken, and its voice was human. The narrator slows, showing how the words rippled outward. On forgotten worlds, slaves and soldiers whispered them in secret. On distant stations, traders repeated them with pride. Even among the Empire's own ranks, some began to question. Could the tide of history be turning? The Empire answered with silence. Their leaders forbade any mention of the defeat, forbade any report of Earth's victory. But silence itself was an answer, for in silence there was no laughter, no mockery, no certainty. Only fear. Aegis turned its course back toward Earth, moving through the endless dark. Its crew carried scars, but their eyes burned with something new. They had faced the storm and endured. They had shown the galaxy that humanity was not a child to be mocked, but a force to be reckoned with. On Earth, when the ship finally returned, crowds gathered in silence to see it descend. They watched its black hull scarred by battle, its weapons still glowing faintly. For many, it was the first proof that their sacrifices had meaning. Mothers who had lost sons in failed prototypes wept, knowing their deaths had not been in vain. Engineers who had worked in shadows stood tall, their efforts no longer secrets. The narrator lingers on the image, a single ship resting at last, yet already a legend. It was more than steel, more than technology. It was the spirit of a people who refused to break. But even as humanity celebrated, a shadow hung over them. The Empire would not forget. The Empire would not forgive. Already its leaders sharpened their plans, gathering more fleets, preparing for wars greater than any before. The battle was won, but the war was only beginning. Still, in that moment, one truth was clear. Humanity had stepped into the galaxy not as a joke, not as a weak world, but as a challenger. And the galaxy trembled. The story closes on the voice of the narrator, cold and certain. The Empire had laughed at human prototypes, but one ship had silenced them. One ship had turned fear back on the rulers of the stars. And somewhere, in the deep halls of power, the Empire knew the most dangerous truth of all. Humanity was just getting started.